The sun had begun to set over the small town, casting long shadows across the park where Mrs. Eleanor Rigby often took her evening strolls. A widow in her late 70s, Eleanor moved slowly, relying heavily on her old, trusty cane. By her side trotted Monty, a stout and fiercely loyal Staffordshire bull terrier whose brindled coat glistened in the fading light. They were an inseparable pair, a common sight in the neighborhood, moving through the world as if tethered together by an invisible bond. That evening, as they ambled along the familiar path lined with aging oaks, a raucous noise broke the calm. Shouts and laughter echoed across the park, growing louder and more disturbing with each passing moment. Eleanor paused, her hand tightening around Monty's leash, sensing the disruption before she saw it. A group of teenagers, clad in heavy boots and cropped jackets adorned with obscure symbols, charged through the park. They were boisterous, their faces hardened by an anger that seemed misplaced in their youth. As they drew closer, the harsh tones of their voices became clear. They were looking for trouble, and unfortunately, Eleanor and Monty found themselves directly in their path. "Look at this," sneered the leader of the group, a tall boy with a shaved head and piercing blue eyes. "What's the old lady gonna do? Hey, Grandma, lost your way to the nursing home?" Eleanor's heart thudded painfully against her ribs. She had encountered many things in her long life, but nothing quite like this. She tried to step aside, to avoid confrontation, but the gang spread out in a half-circle around her and Monty. "Don't touch her," a small voice inside her warned. Monty sensed the danger too, his ears pinned back, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. But Eleanor held the leash firmly, her other hand trembling on her cane. "What's wrong? Can't your doggy talk for you?" Another taunted, stepping closer. The air was thick with the threat of violence. Eleanor mustered all her courage. "Please," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "We're just passing through. Leave us be." The leader scoffed, looking around at his comrades who chuckled menacingly. "What's the fun in that, boys? Let's show Granny here how we do things." As he stepped forward, the unthinkable happened. Monty lunged, not in attack, but placing himself squarely between Eleanor and the leader. His stance was protective, unyielding, a clear warning. The suddenness of it startled the teenagers. "Whoa, look at the mutt," one of them exclaimed, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Just a stupid dog," the leader said, though he hesitated, his foot hovering mid-step. "Kick it away, Jerry." But before anyone could move, Monty's eyes locked onto the leader's. There was something in that gaze, an intensity, a promise that he would protect Eleanor at all costs. It was enough to make the boldest among them falter. The standoff lasted only a few seconds, but to Eleanor, it stretched out endlessly. Then, as if on cue, a distant siren sliced through the air. The group exchanged glances. "Let's get out of here," the leader muttered, and just like that, they backed away. Eleanor didn't breathe easy until she watched them disappear into the fading light. She bent down, her hands shaking as they found Monty's head. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Monty licked her hand, his tail wagging slowly. As they resumed their walk, Eleanor knew something profound had shifted within her. The world might be more dangerous than she had feared, but in Monty, she had a guardian whose bravery knew no bounds. She wasn't just walking through the park, she was walking through life shielded by unwavering loyalty and love. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Eleanor felt a flicker of hope, that perhaps, just maybe, there was still good in this world that could outshine the dark. The morning after the confrontation shimmered with dew, the park bathed in a soft golden glow as if to wash away the memories of the previous evening's distress. Eleanor, though still shaken, adhered to her routine. Monty, ever perceptive, stayed close, his senses heightened, eyes scanning their surroundings with vigilance. As they navigated the winding pathways, whispers fluttered from a cluster of early risers who frequented the park for their morning jogs and dog walks. They had heard about the incident. News traveled fast in small towns. Nods of respect and concern accompanied by gentle smiles were directed towards Eleanor, creating a tapestry of community support she hadn't expected to witness. Julia, a young woman who often ran with her shepherd mix, approached Eleanor, slowing her pace as she neared. "Mrs. Rigby," she began, her expression a mix of admiration and worry. "I heard about what happened last night. Are you all right?" Eleanor offered a small, appreciative smile. "Yes, dear. Monty and I are quite all right, thank you." Julia's gaze dropped to Monty, who sat by Eleanor's side, his gaze still alert. He's quite the hero, isn't he? She remarked, her voice tinged with warmth. Eleanor glanced at Monty, her pride evident. He is indeed. With farewells exchanged, Eleanor continued her walk, her thoughts swirling. The community's reaction added a layer of complexity to the incident. It wasn't just a personal attack. It had rippled through the fabric of the town, stirring a collective unease. Elsewhere, the teenagers involved had regrouped, their bravado somewhat diminished by the encounter. In an abandoned warehouse that served as their usual hangout, they gathered around, the events of the previous night unspooling in heated debates. "We should have done something," one muttered, kicking at the ground. "And get bitten by that beast," another countered, his voice edged with frustration. The leader, still nursing his pride, leaned against a graffiti-laden wall. "Forget it. It's done. But we can't have people thinking we're scared of an old lady and her dog." The group fell silent, the weight of his words settling like dust in the air. They knew something had to be done to reclaim their standing, yet the uncertainty of what that should be hung heavily over them. Back in the park, Eleanor remained oblivious to the continuing turmoil her encounter had sparked. Instead, she focused on the crisp air filling her lungs, the soft rustling of leaves, and the steady rhythm of Monty's breathing as he walked by her side. Despite the previous day's fears, life had to go on, and she was determined to face it with as much normalcy as she could muster. As the days unfolded, the incident in the park gradually transformed from fresh news to whispered legend within the town. Eleanor noticed more faces turning towards her and Monty during their walks, expressions mixed with curiosity and a hint of reverence. Her morning strolls took longer now, interrupted by locals expressing their support or merely wanting to touch Monty, as if his bravery had imbued him with some kind of protective magic. At the local cafe, a hub of daily gossip, Eleanor overheard snippets of conversations that carried her and Monty's names. People debated the character of the youths involved, their upbringing, and the state of the town's youth culture. The cafe owner, Mrs. Thornton, a stout woman with a no-nonsense attitude, had pinned a newspaper clipping about the event on the bulletin board, the headline bold and somewhat sensationalized. Meanwhile, the group of teenagers struggled with their tarnished image. Isolated discussions had evolved into a collective concern about their standing in the community. They congregated in their usual spots, their talks laced with frustration and plans of redemption. "We need to do something big," the leader declared during one such gathering under the dim lights of their hideout. His suggestion was met with nods. They all agreed that action was necessary to shift the narrative back to their favor. Amidst these tensions, Eleanor remained largely unaware of the brewing storm. Her focus was solely on maintaining her daily routine, finding solace in the simplicity of her interactions with neighbors and shopkeepers. Life seemed to carry on with a veneer of normalcy, but beneath the surface, currents of change were stirring. In her small, neatly kept home, Eleanor discussed the situation with her daughter, Anne, who had come to visit after hearing about the incident. "Mom, are you sure you're okay walking there every day?" Anne asked, concern creasing her forehead. Eleanor, pouring tea into 2 cups, replied with a calm she hardly felt. "I have to, dear. I can't let fear dictate my life." Monty, lying at her feet, let out a soft whine as if sensing the tension in the air. Anne watched her mother with a mix of admiration and worry. She knew arguing would be futile. Her mother had made up her mind. Instead, she offered, "At least let me walk with you sometimes." Outside, as the season shifted, the leaves began to turn, painting the town in hues of orange and red. Unseen, the youth group planned their next move, a gesture they hoped would restore their reputation and dispel the growing disdain of the townsfolk. Their leader, more determined than ever, promised a spectacle that would turn heads and force everyone to see them in a new light. As Eleanor and Monty continued their daily walks, oblivious to the whispered plans and the watchful eyes of the town, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the resilience and unity of the community once more. Autumn's embrace tightened around the town, the air crisp and carrying the scent of wood smoke and decaying leaves. Eleanor's routine remained unchanged, despite the undercurrent of unrest that murmured just beyond her perception. Each morning, Monty and her would traverse the same paths, now strewn with a carpet of golden and crimson leaves that crunched satisfyingly underfoot. In schoolyards and on street corners, the youth group's intentions simmered and took shape. The leader, known amongst his peers as Dax, orchestrated their strategy with meticulous care, aiming to orchestrate a display that would seize the town's attention and alter their narrative forever. The plan was audacious, designed not only to shock, but to reclaim a sense of control and respect they felt had been stripped from them. As part of their preparation, the group gathered materials in secrecy, pooling resources to create something visually striking. Graffiti supplies, smoke bombs, and elaborate masks were procured, each element chosen to craft an unforgettable spectacle. Their late-night meetings were filled with a mix of anxiety and excitement as they rehearsed their roles, ensuring everyone knew their part. Elsewhere, Eleanor's interactions with her neighbors grew more frequent. People she barely knew now greeted her warmly, some stopping to share their own stories of encounters with unruly youth, seeking comfort in shared experiences. These exchanges, though heartening, also served to weave Eleanor more tightly into the community's social fabric, making her an unwitting symbol of resilience and defiance. Within this charged atmosphere, the local police, tipped off by concerned citizens who noticed unusual activities, increased their patrols. Officer Hayes, a veteran on the force, took particular interest in the rumors swirling about a potential stunt by the local youth. His presence in the neighborhood became more pronounced, his watchful eyes missing little. Anne, visiting her mother more frequently, felt the tension that buzzed through the town. Her concern for Eleanor deepened, prompting her to sometimes join the morning walks, her company a silent testament to her growing apprehension. Together, they would pass by the cafe where discussions about community safety were becoming a regular feature, spurred on by Mrs. Thornton's relentless updates on the situation with the youths. On the eve of their planned event, the group met for one final briefing. Dax reviewed every detail, emphasizing the need for precision and impact. "Tonight, we change everything," he declared, his voice a low growl that resonated in the chilly air of their makeshift headquarters. As night fell, the town settled under a blanket of uneasy quiet, a collective breath held in anticipation of what morning might bring. Lights flickered in homes as families gathered, unaware of the spectacle that was poised to unfold under the cover of darkness. Eleanor, for her part, retired early, Monty curled at the foot of her bed, both oblivious to the storm that was about to break. As darkness cloaked the town, whispers of mischief morphed into action. Dax and his group, dressed in shadow-like garb, assembled under the veil of night. Their footsteps were muffled by the soft earth as they converged on the central square, a place usually bustling by day, but now deserted and eerily silent. In the distance, street lamps cast pools of light that flickered intermittently, the occasional moth fluttering against the bulbs. The group moved with purpose, each member carrying part of the gear essential for their display. At Dax's signal, they began to set up, working quickly to avoid any unwanted attention. Graffiti cans rattled quietly in their bags, and smoke devices were positioned strategically around the square. Back at Eleanor's house, the night passed peacefully. Monty stirred occasionally, his dreams causing his paws to twitch, while Eleanor slept soundly, her breaths deep and even. Unaware of the brewing chaos, her rest was undisturbed by the growing tension that gripped the rest of the town. Officer Hayes, making his rounds, noted a few shadows flitting through the park adjacent to the square. His instincts honed by years on the force, he called for backup, his voice low and urgent on the radio. "Something's up at the square, proceeding to investigate, requesting immediate support." In the square, the group's preparations neared completion. Dax surveyed their work with a nod of satisfaction. The graffiti depicted large, vibrant murals that expressed their frustration and desire for recognition. As the final touches were added, smoke bombs were armed, ready to envelop the area in a dense, colorful fog. The first hint of dawn tinted the horizon as the operation reached its climax. With a look from Dax, the bombs were activated, releasing plumes of smoke that swirled and danced in the gentle morning breeze. The effect was mesmerizing, a chaotic ballet of color that transformed the square into an otherworldly scene. As the smoke began to settle, the sound of sirens pierced the morning air. Police cars converged on the square, their lights slicing through the thinning haze. Dax and his crew, their message made, didn't wait to see the aftermath. They dispersed, slipping away into the morning like specters, leaving behind their mark and a community soon to be awakened in shock and awe. Officer Hayes arrived to find the square transformed into a canvas of bold statements and vibrant colors. He assessed the scene with a mixture of admiration for the artistic expression and concern for the implications of the act. As he radioed in the situation, the first of the morning joggers and dog walkers, including Eleanor and a concerned Anne, began to arrive, drawn by the commotion and the curious spectacle before them. As the community gathered, reactions varied from awe to dismay, the bold display sparking a multitude of conversations about youth, art, rebellion, and respect. Eleanor, standing beside Anne and Monty, took in the scene with wide eyes, her mind racing to piece together the events that had unfolded while she slept, unaware of how deeply the town's youth yearned to be seen and heard. Morning light fully revealed the extent of the transformation in the square. The once bland concrete surfaces were now alive with vivid graffiti, depicting scenes of conflict, hope, and deep-seated frustration. The residents of the town, roused by the unexpected awakening of their central meeting place, gathered in clusters, their faces reflecting a spectrum of emotions from anger to wonder. Eleanor, with Monty at her side, navigated through the crowd, her eyes absorbing every detail of the artwork. Anne, protective and ever watchful, kept close, her mind uneasy about the potential for more disruptions. The air was thick with murmurs and the occasional sharp outcry as more townsfolk arrived, each adding their voice to the growing cacophony of debate. Meanwhile, Dax and his group, now hidden within the anonymity of the town's more deserted streets, regrouped to discuss the aftermath of their actions. They peered around corners and whispered in hushed tones, their adrenaline still surging from the night's escapades. The fear of repercussions was palpable among them, yet there was a shared sense of triumph that they had made their mark in such a bold manner. At the cafe, Mrs. Thornton set up an impromptu forum, pulling chairs into a semicircle outside her establishment. She invited the morning's patrons to sit and discuss the implications of the graffiti. "This is art, but it's also a statement," she declared, her voice cutting through the quieter discussions, redirecting their focus. "We need to address the root of this, not just the paint." Officer Hayes, his uniform stark against the colorful new backdrop of the square, took notes and listened intently to the conversations around him. He knew his response would have to be measured and considerate of the town's clearly divided feelings. Nearby, local artists and activists started to arrive, drawn by social media posts that had quickly spread images of the square's transformation. Cameras clicked and phones recorded, capturing the vivid expressions of street art that now adorned the town center. Among them was Leo, a young photographer known for his documentary work on urban expression. He moved through the crowd, his camera snapping methodically, intent on capturing the raw emotions and intricate details of the graffiti. Eleanor found herself drawn to a particular piece, a large mural depicting a dog with a protective stance, its eyes fierce yet sorrowful. She reached out to trace the outline, her fingers trembling slightly. Monty, sensing her distress, pressed closer, his body warm against her leg. As discussions continued, a plan began to take shape among the town's leaders and concerned citizens. A meeting would be held to address the youth's grievances, to provide them a platform to express their feelings and challenges. The idea was met with mixed reactions, some arguing it would only encourage further defiance, while others saw it as a necessary step towards healing and understanding. Throughout the day, the square buzzed with activity, the unexpected gallery drawing visitors from beyond the town's borders. Eleanor, deeply moved by the unfolding events, felt a growing resolve to bridge the gap between the generations, her own experiences as a guide. As the sun climbed higher, casting new light on the vibrant walls, the town slowly began to embrace the chaos of the morning as an opportunity for dialogue and change, setting the stage for a community eager to understand its younger members and possibly guide them towards more constructive expressions of their fervent energies. In the wake of the colorful upheaval, a community meeting was scheduled at the town hall, intended to serve as a forum for all voices to be heard. Flyers were distributed, social media buzzed with announcements, and word of mouth did the rest. The hall, usually the venue for more mundane civic affairs, was reconfigured to accommodate what promised to be a large and diverse gathering. The day of the meeting, Eleanor prepared with a quiet determination. Dressing more formally than usual, she chose a simple but elegant blue dress, her way of honoring the seriousness of the occasion. Monty, always attuned to her moods, watched her with a calm attentiveness, his presence a comforting constant by her side. As townsfolk began to fill the hall, the air tingled with anticipation. Seats were taken, greetings exchanged, and a low murmur filled the space as community members of all ages and backgrounds came together. The front of the room featured a long table, behind which sat several community leaders, including Officer Hayes, who had taken an active role in facilitating the dialogue. Dax and several members of his group entered the hall tentatively, their usual brash demeanor tempered by the gravity of the situation. They found seats together, their eyes scanning the room, taking in the faces of those they had shocked and challenged with their nocturnal artistry. The meeting commenced with a brief introduction by the town mayor, who emphasized the importance of understanding and respect. Today, we come together not to accuse, but to understand, to listen, and to speak openly about our concerns and hopes for this community, he stated, setting a tone of conciliation. One by one, residents stood to speak. An elderly man talked about the town's history, how change had always been a part of their growth. A high school teacher suggested more programs for youth engagement. Parents expressed concerns about safety and the need for constructive outlets for the town's youth. When it was Eleanor's turn, she rose slowly, leaning on her cane for support, Monty by her side. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and infused with a quiet strength. "We all seek to be understood, to be seen for who we are," she began, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, lingering on the faces of the young people in the back. What happened in our square was a shock, but also a conversation started not with words, but with images and colors. Let's continue that conversation with words now. Her speech acted as a bridge, drawing more young people into the discussion. Dax, after some hesitation, stood. His voice was unsteady at first, but grew firmer as he spoke. "We wanted to be heard," he admitted, "and maybe we chose the wrong way to show it, but we don't feel like we belong here, like our views matter." The dialogue that followed was raw and illuminating. Ideas flowed for art programs, mentorships, and regular open mic nights where young people could express themselves creatively in a supportive environment. As the meeting drew to a close, there was a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter for the town. Plans were made for follow-up meetings, and committees were formed, involving both the older and younger generations. The hall slowly emptied, leaving behind chairs askew and a floor littered with forgotten pamphlets. The evening had sparked a flame of community spirit and hope, illuminating paths forward that were previously shrouded in misunderstanding and mistrust. The days following the town hall meeting buzzed with renewed energy and commitment. Across all corners of the town, both young and old engaged in planning and executing the ideas that had sprung from that pivotal gathering. A spirit of collaboration, once dormant, now invigorated the community, prompting actions that were visible on the streets, in schools, and throughout local businesses. A committee, co-chaired by Eleanor and a young local artist named Marla, was formed to oversee the development of a community art project. Their first task was to identify spaces throughout the town that could serve as legal canvases for street art. Empty walls of buildings, stark and unadorned, were soon marked for transformation, designated as sites where expression would be encouraged and celebrated. Meanwhile, Dax and his group found themselves involved in organizing the first of many planned open mic nights. The local community center, usually quiet and underused in the evenings, buzzed with activity as they set up stages and sound systems. Flyers were designed not just by one person, but were a collective effort, each contributing their unique touch, merging stark, bold designs with vibrant, hopeful colors. Local businesses, too, played their part. The cafe owner, Mrs. Thornton, offered her space for poetry readings and small acoustic concerts. "It's about giving them a place where they feel they belong," she explained to her patrons, who nodded in agreement, happy to see the once rebellious youth channeling their energies in more positive ways. In schools, teachers integrated discussions about civic responsibility and artistic expression into their curricula. A high school art teacher, Mr. Jennings, coordinated with Marla to bring in local artists for workshops, exposing students to different mediums and techniques, and allowing them to explore their own creative potential in a structured yet freeing environment. Officer Hayes, for his part, initiated a Coffee with Cops program, where police officers and community members could meet informally to discuss concerns, share stories, and build relationships outside of the traditional roles of law enforcement and citizen. These gatherings, held in the park where Eleanor and Monty had their fateful encounter, became a monthly highlight for many. The fabric of the town was changing, threads of various colors and textures weaving into a tapestry richer and more complex than before. Each initiative, each event, added depth and vibrancy, reducing the distances between generations and backgrounds. At the heart of these transformations was Eleanor, who, despite her age, showed an enthusiasm that inspired those around her. With Monty often by her side, she attended nearly every event, her presence a gentle reminder of the catalyst for these changes. As autumn deepened and leaves turned from gold to russet, the town found itself in a rhythm of renewal. Walls that once stood blank and unremarkable now burst with color, messages of hope, challenge, and unity painted across their surfaces. The square, once the center of controversy, became a communal gallery, a place where people met not just to view art, but to discuss, debate, and dream together. Through these endeavors, the residents of the town learned that change does not require the discarding of the old, but rather the embracing of the new, each generation finding value and purpose in the contributions of the other. As winter approached, they prepared to celebrate these efforts, planning an end-of-year festival that would showcase the breadth of their achievements. This festival, anticipated with joy and pride, was set to be a vibrant affirmation of the town's identity, resilience, and spirit. With winter's chill whispering through the streets, the entire town buzzed in anticipation of the upcoming festival. Every corner of the community was alive with preparations, each person contributing to what was hoped to be a memorable celebration of unity and creativity. The festival committee, a blend of young faces and seasoned town members, met regularly in the town hall, their discussions lively and filled with laughter. Banners and decorations were being crafted by local artists, including vibrant garlands and hand-painted signs that reflected the town's newfound vibrancy. Eleanor, alongside Marla, reviewed the schedule of events. They had organized a lineup that included local bands, poetry readings, dance performances, and an art show featuring works created by residents of all ages. Food vendors from the area were also enlisted to provide a taste of local cuisine, promising a feast as diverse as the community itself. Dax, finding a new role as a liaison between the youth and the organizers, coordinated with the technical teams to ensure that the lighting and sound systems were apt for the performances. His involvement was a testament to his transformation and newfound commitment to positive community engagement. The local school's drama club, under the guidance of Mr. Jennings, rehearsed a play that depicted the town's history, including a nuanced portrayal of recent events. The young actors practiced with earnest intensity, understanding the importance of their performance in bridging generational gaps. Mrs. Thornton turned her cafe into an informal headquarters for volunteer coordination, her tables piled with lists and schedules. Her establishment became a hive of activity, where plans were made and materials distributed, her strong coffee fueling the efforts of dozens of volunteers. The police, too, were integral to the preparations. Officer Hayes oversaw the safety protocols, ensuring that the event would not only be joyous, but secure. His team worked closely with festival organizers, their presence a reassuring sight that helped ease any lingering concerns among the townsfolk. Even the local library got involved, setting up a booth for the festival where they would display historical archives and host storytelling sessions for children. The librarian, Miss Carter, curated a selection of books on community building and art, encouraging festival goers to borrow and read them. In the park, where the festival would take place, crews were busy setting up stages and seating areas. The space was transformed with strings of lights and colorful banners, turning the familiar park into a festive wonderland waiting to be filled with the sounds of celebration. Monty, ever Eleanor's companion, was fitted with a special vest for the occasion, made by a local seamstress who had lovingly embroidered his name along with a pattern of paw prints and hearts. He seemed to understand the significance of his role, carrying himself with a dignified air as he accompanied Eleanor through the festival grounds, inspecting the setups. As the final day of preparations dawned, the air was brisk but filled with excitement. The townspeople, each contributing in their own way, felt a collective pride. This festival was not just a celebration of the year's end, but a declaration of the town's identity, reborn through art, dialogue, and the collective efforts of its residents. With every banner hung and every stage set, the anticipation grew, the town ready to come together under the winter sky to celebrate the tapestry of their community, woven through shared experiences and a newfound understanding. The day of the festival dawned clear and cold, the early morning sun casting a crisp glow over the freshly decorated park. The town, now brimming with anticipation, came alive as residents and visitors alike started to fill the streets, drawn by the promise of a day filled with art, music, and community spirit. As the clock struck the opening hour, the sound of music floated through the air, a local folk band taking the stage to kick off the festivities. Their melodies, vibrant and uplifting, set the tone for the day, inviting people to dance and sing along. The park quickly became a mosaic of activity, each area buzzing with excitement and laughter. Eleanor, dressed warmly against the winter chill, arrived with Monty by her side. His festive vest attracted admiring looks and gentle pats from passers-by, his tail wagging in response to the friendly attention. Together, they walked through the park, Eleanor greeting familiar faces and introducing herself to newcomers, her pride in the town's achievements evident in her every word and smile. The art exhibits, set up along the park's winding paths, showcased a wide range of expressions, from large, dramatic murals to delicate watercolors, each piece telling a story of personal and collective journey. Visitors moved among them, some pausing to reflect, others animatedly discussing the techniques and themes on display. Dax and his friends, now seen in a new light by many of the townsfolk, hosted a workshop area where they taught spray painting techniques on canvas. The laughter and chatter emanating from their booth spoke volumes about their integration into the festival's fabric, their earlier transgressions repurposed into teaching moments about expression and redemption. At noon, the crowd gathered around the main stage for the highlight of the festival, the community play. As the young actors took their places, the audience fell into a hushed anticipation. The play unfolded beautifully, the story of the town's past weaving seamlessly into the narrative of recent events. The performance not only entertained, but also sparked a deeper connection among the audience members, their shared history and recent challenges laid bare in a poignant, artistic form. Food stalls lined the edges of the park, offering everything from homemade pies to exotic street foods, a testament to the culinary diversity of the town. The smells and tastes added another layer of delight to the festival, with every vendor busy serving happy customers, their faces bright with joy. Mrs. Thornton, ever the organizer, moved through the crowd, ensuring that everything ran smoothly. Her presence was a comforting constant, her efforts underpinning much of the festival's success. As the day turned into evening, the festival culminated with a grand finale, a spectacular light show accompanied by a live orchestra. The music swelled as colorful lights danced across the night sky, mirroring the joy and unity of the community. People stood together, shoulder to shoulder, their faces illuminated by the dazzling display, a powerful symbol of their collective journey and newfound harmony. Eleanor, standing beside Anne and Monty, watched the lights with a serene expression. Around her, the community she loved so deeply shared in this moment of beauty and reflection, their differences transcended by the art and joy of the festival. As the final notes of the orchestra faded into the crisp night air, applause erupted, loud and heartfelt, echoing through the park. The festival, a celebration of a town transformed by dialogue and understanding, closed on a note of hopeful anticipation, the memories created that day promising to light the way for many years to come.